Emerging Artists Lecture Series. Thank you for being with us. I think this is the third of 4 events in a series of monthly talks. And we're so delighted to have with us tonight another 3 emerging artists who will be sharing their stories and processes and creations. Thank you so much. So you may know the Seattle Metals Guild as the organization that hosts the Northwest Jewelry and Metals Symposium, which is now in its 30th year. We've just announced our 2025 date for that. So save the date. That'll be Saturday, October 4th. And it'll be taking place both in Seattle and online. And then sort of in contrast to that fall event, which typically features established artists, we've introduced this Emerging Artist Series to help make space for these artist voices in the industry. We also, as a guild, offer grants funding to our members, and we alternate each year between offering a grant to an established artist and an emerging one. And so all that's to say that we have opportunities for all types of artists, no matter where you are in your journey or your practice as an enthusiast of jewelry and metals. I'd like to thank tonight's sponsors, Art Jewelry Forum and Rio Grande Jewelry Supply. They've sponsored this series in order that we can all enjoy it for free. So thanks so much to them. If you're available to help, we invite you to make a donation to our Speakers Fund. I'm going to share a link in the chat right now to that. And all of the proceeds from that are going directly to our speakers who will share the pot. And that'll just allow us to pay them, a better rate for their time and energy. And hopefully you're able to contribute to that. So thank you. Please mark your calendars for our last event in this series. That'll be at 6 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday, June 17th. And we'll have 3 more artists joining us then. I have a lot of things that I want to tell you about that the Guild is doing right now, and hopefully you're already aware, but I'm just going to rattle through them. Friday, we have a deadline. If you've made any works leveraging mokume, gane, or bimetal, and you'd like to offer those for sale in our show, we are working with Danica Design and having an exhibition in June. So please submit your work to that. It's due Friday. We're also having a big event called Guild Fest on Sunday, June 8th, and we're asking for donations of tools, materials, and finished works to be part of our big silent auction that takes place at that event. So you can see all of this on our website, and if you're able to donate anything there, I know I have a lot of things just sitting around. I need to make space in my studio, and I'm excited to offload them and hopefully help the Guild make a little money while I'm at it. So perhaps you're in the same boat. All right. And with that, I would like to introduce our student board member, Amy Shea, who will lead us through tonight's event. Amy.
Hi, everyone. As Kristen mentioned, my name is Amy Shea. I am usually in Seattle. Currently, I'm in Canada to be your, I guess, unspiritual guide through this journey today. So we have 3 great speakers with us. We've got Paige, Mariah, and Shannon, and we'll be hearing about them and their works. So our first speaker will be Mariah Shelby. She hails from New Mexico. She is a metalsmith and craftswoman based in New Mexico. She works pieces of art that focus on physiological response as a response to the pandemic-related anxiety and depression. She has her BA in Studio Arts from New Mexico State University and her MFA in Fine Arts from Colorado State University. So thanks, Mariah, for joining us today. Take it away.
Thanks for having me. So as Amy just introduced me, my name is Mariah Shelby. I'm happy to be here at this Emerging Artist Series. So thank you for that. It's the first one I've done in a while, so fingers crossed. Let's see. Go ahead and scroll to my next thing. So about me, I'm from Bloomfield, New Mexico. I got my bachelor's at New Mexico State University. I came from Bloomfield. It's a 3 stoplight town, so that's pretty small for those who need reference. And then I went and got my master's at Colorado State University. I am a Gemini. I must acquire all knowledge. I am currently pursuing a certificate in audio production online. So, like I said, I love knowledge. And then I love music. Right now, this is my home studio, so things have been kind of changing for me. Um, it's kind of exciting. Love my dad for letting me have this space, trying to get a studio started again after graduating. So if you're trying to do that, I'll just let you know it's a process. Don't be too hard on yourself. So I'm going to start kind of with my undergrad work to kind of lead you through the process of how that pandemic kind of led me into considering materials being more important in the conversation of my work. So this is from my undergrad. This is a piece that I made untitled from 2017. At that time, I was really interested in disease and disease transmission, bacterial things transmitted through pets. I didn't have a pet at the time and kind of wanted one, but anxiety was like, yeah, but there's all these things that go along with them, like disease. So in my undergrad, I focused on kind of looking at diseases and how things are transmitted. And it kind of interested me in things that you can get from pets that you love, loved ones, things of that sort. Another piece I did, it's titled La Facite from 2017. Once again, just looking at bacteria that's transmitted through animals and pets that we care about and love. And then in 2019, I joined the program at Colorado State University for my MFA and was still on track of looking at transmittable diseases through loved ones. So I was very interested in diseases that are transmitted through STDs, biological, hereditary diseases, things of that sort. And so I started down that path. This one is titled Exposed. It's looking at the transmission of HPV. When I was working through these, I was very focused on imagery and aesthetic. And so kind of going through phases of HPV leading into contamination, and then finally the infection phase. So initially starting in the program, I really wanted to focus on like imagery-based storytelling and building objects that told a story through imagery. The next one I have here is Restricted. It's a piece also focused on HPV that I created through casting. I used copper chain. I really wanted to focus on weight. So using weight, physical weight and imagery to start telling a story. This one was also from 2019. And then something kind of happened where I started considering materials instead of imagery. So after post-pandemic, here we go. Post-pandemic is when I really started to consider material as a way to speak to an audience. One thing that I'm sure a lot of us experienced through the pandemic was that anxiety, the social anxiety, the depression, just those encroaching feelings. And one thing that I kind of started thinking about is what materials am I using that people can relate to? So I started thinking about my own personal anxiety and how it affects me. This piece is called Encroaching. If you couldn't tell from the picture, decided to cut off all my hair because one of the things that was very triggering for me after wearing a mask for 2 years was the feeling of being suffocated, which became a problem with my hair. And so to fight that anxiety, I chopped it all off and then really kind of sat there with it for a year and thought about it and decided to make a piece with it because it was one of those life-changing moments. Understanding the importance of hair in culture. Hair is meant to hold memory. It's meant to hold the spirit. And so all of this hair that I had during COVID, I chopped it all off. It was very releasing and a moment of letting go. So I was very excited about this piece, learning that you can sew hair on a sewing machine. Another piece that I made is this one is Annulment. It's a piece for my past self where I was trying to understand how materials of my past played into memory. So growing up in a small town, it's a really big deal as a girl in my family to kind of become feminine, becoming an adult and things of that sort. My mom really wanted me to wear lace, white lace for proms, dance events. I did finally give her the satisfaction of wearing a white lace dress to my undergrad graduation, but in the progress of becoming a woman, I felt like I hit these certain steps in life where you kind of stumble, you fall, you feel a little dirty, you feel like you're a little worn down, but then you get back up. And so this piece was reflecting on how material plays into the building of self. I still love lace today, but I don't find lace to be the feminine me anymore. So I built this piece as kind of like, hey, it's time to hang up that portion of your life and let's get going. One book that I read in grad school that really had an impact on how I view matter and material is The Vibrant Matter by Jane Bennett. One of my favorite quotes is, each human is a heterogeneous compound of wonderfully vibrant, dangerously vibrant matter. This piece here is called Rumination. I helped take care of my grandmother who has autoimmune disease during the pandemic. And so I hung out in her house all the time. I was there all the time. That's where I stayed. That's where I slept. And the room I stayed in had this huge, like, souvenir spoon collection. And I remember during the pandemic, I was sitting there and I was really just spinning out. I had all these dreams to travel the world. Was that still going to be possible? The pandemic was a big life event for so many of us, and so many things changed. And so I started thinking on that time a little bit deeper. So, which brings me into material and emotion, how certain materials can hold emotion for an individual, hold emotion for viewers. Silver has become very important when it comes to memory, fear, kind of like that deeper need to know for me. Silver historically has been used as antimicrobial in the past. And so one of the big fears I had is understanding my body. I had a tooth that was horrible. I have deformed teeth, and so they cause a lot of problems for me, a lot of anxiety. And so processing these emotions of anxiety and how to understand my body through material kind of helped release a lot of that anxiety, looking historically at materials. So in this image, I have Whistle in the Dark, which is a protective, it's a grill, but it's a protective retainer to help me kind of face the fact that I want to protect my other teeth. I don't care so much about these teeth. I want to protect these teeth. While I have Monomania, which focuses on my deformed tooth, made out of lead. I have a cap made out of lead because of how toxic it felt to me, these anxious feelings. And so using material to understand protective versus toxic is how I work through things. I have images here of me placing these. They do fit. That was the first time I've ever made a grill. And so they do fit. So silver has become important as far as protection, wanting to protect those memories. Whereas lead has become toxic. And this was a film. I did put the lead in my mouth for like 0.2 seconds. She filmed it and we took a still. So don't do this. My next series kind of focused on trying to figure out how I feel emotions. One thing I realized is it's very hard to talk about emotions, especially for me. And so using material to kind of talk about emotions that I feel. So I had a panel series. I have Detach, which is the central one, which was the first in the series. It previously was named alexithymia. At this point, I didn't know I was neurodivergent. I thought everybody had a hard time describing their emotions, like trying to figure out what they're feeling. I essentially changed the name to Detach because I started to understand my emotions once I kind of got these diagnoses and understanding how I experience the world differently. So these are all made from copper. This one is detach. I have the one on the left, which is titter, and then the one on the right, which is phases. Copper was used in all of these. They are applied to a wood board panel. Copper for me signifies the human, especially feminine humans. Historically, copper has been used to reference Aphrodite, Venus, the feminine. It's malleable, it's pliable. It can be formed, it can be transformed, it can be polished, it can be oxidized. It's ever transforming. And so I viewed myself as copper. So these panels became kind of the phases of myself, and how my emotions change so rapidly, whereas other times they don't feel real. So copper became part of me. I am copper. Once it came time for thesis, then I really started to hone in on kind of getting these feelings transferable to others through experience. And so I started using alternative materials to get those feelings for someone else to experience. This piece is titled Asphyxiation. I was really focused on trying to really create the experience of a panic attack for someone who's never experienced it. So I had to break down like my panic attacks that I was having. And the biggest thing for me was it felt like a pile of rocks on my chest. I remember telling my doctor this, a pile of rocks on my chest. So I kind of started to blend the materials that I kind of went through, where imagery was a very big thing when I first started grad school, and began to merge material as well. So in this series, I used river rocks alongside fake made plaster rocks, just plaster of Paris cast rocks, to show that sometimes those feelings of anxiety are real. There's certain things that cause real anxious thoughts, whereas once that anxiety sets in, you begin creating other scenarios. At least for me, I become this little tornado spiral of anxiety, and I start making up scenarios. And kind of the weight that kind of pulls down on you as you're going through anxiety attacks. Recently, I'm coming towards the end, so I have been blessed to work 2 jobs, first of all, but one of them does allow me to start creating more and being in the studio more. So right now I'm just going through a bunch of studies and kind of revisiting and reacquainting myself with the thought process and materials and processes. So I've kind of been just like cranking out whatever, just making to make at this point, because there's been a period where I haven't been able to. So right now I'm doing a bunch of material studies, figuring out lines, looking at colors, different materials, figuring out what materials mean to me. I am in a concrete phase. Concrete has become a very stable material for me. Just as I've grown, concrete is starting to have different meaning for me. Previously, it's been you're stuck. Anytime I think of concrete, I think of being stuck. But now it's building that solid foundation. I'm building foundations with concrete. I feel like different materials become different things for each person. Also thinking about your audience and how they view certain materials. Concrete is very, very construction based, very, I'm trying to find the word. Suddenly my words have run out, but it's very consumeristic, very affordable, very consumeristic. It's meant to be fast, quick, easy building. So concrete is becoming a new material that I'm exploring. As well as mirrors. So mirrors have become a big thing for me lately, figuring out mirrors and how I view myself. Once again, concrete and these weird bean forms, trying to pair imagery and material again. Just a lot of experimenting. Weird things I find on the ground, like turkey beards. just finding new textures, finding new materials, and figuring out what they mean, building my material vocabulary. This one is out of order, but this one was from my undergrad. So, but that is it. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Well, thank you so
So,
much, Mariah.
yeah,
Um,
hopefully I didn't talk too fast. I had a lot of information to try to squeeze in there.
no, I picked it up, but I'm a fast talker as well. I do have a question. What's a
Yeah.
turkey beard? I've never heard of that phrase
Oh,
before.
so turkeys, when they are growing, they have a keratin base on their throat. It's literally like a and as they grow older and older, it starts to grow longer and longer. And at some point in their life, it actually detaches and falls off. Um,
Oh, so
so a
that thing
turkey,
you showed wasn't human hair. It was the turkey. It was
no, it was
literally,
a turkey
oh,
beard. Yeah. And the one I found, I found in the middle of my road. I live in the middle of nowhere. And I thought it was like a horse tail, like, oh, maybe somebody like cut a piece of their horse tail. And I was like, no, there's a keratin, like there's a hard nub in there. And so I had to do a bunch of research to figure out what it was. And yeah, it's a turkey beard, a very long one. It's at least 8 inches. An average turkey beard is only 4. So I
oh.
probably have some old man's trophy, hunting trophy. So
That's so interesting. Well, these never fail me as far as learning something new. Um, I also found your comment on how anxiety feels to be very interesting because, like panic attacks, I know how you said it feels like rocks. Like for me, it feels like kind of like my skin is crawling. So it's kind of
oh
interesting
yeah.
how like a mental um, kind of manifestation and a physical can be so different. Whereas like, everyone's like arm broken kind of feels the same. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
It
all
is
right.
so
Well,
different for everyone.
it's very much so. Well, thank you so much, Mariah. That was great.
Oh,
Next, we are going to move on to Paige Van Doren. She's based in Portland, Oregon, and she is a contemporary jeweler, metalsmith, and educator. Um, I saw a lot of her work when I was, stalking everyone on Instagram, to be around forging. She has her BFA in metalsmith and jewelry from the University of Oregon, her MFA in metal at the State University of New York at New Paltz, where she's a full-time visiting lecturer for 2024 to 2025. She's also the recipient of the Ethical Metalsmith So Fresh, So Clean 2020 Emerging Artist Award, and she's shown at New York Jewelry Week and other various national exhibitions. So, Paige, please share with us what you have.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I am going to share my screen. All right. Um, Good evening, everyone. I am so thrilled to be here. My name is Paige. I would like to start by thanking the Seattle Metals Guild for inviting me to share my work and research, as well as my fellow presenters for all of their wonderful contributions. I have a somewhat complicated relationship with contemporary jewelry and craft. The discourse around material and craft methodology is a place where I find limitless questions. I have a really deep love and respect for the history and framework of our field. And at the same time, I've always really struggled to understand my own position within it. When I started making this body of work I'm sharing this evening, Elegy for the Wound, I had envisioned it all to be jewelry, and towards the beginning, I made so many really, really terrible pieces of jewelry. Mechanisms were botched and functional components were really rushed. And these are things I know how to do. It's not for a lack of skill or knowledge. So I had to really assess and pause and identify why this kept happening. The conclusion I've come to is that my approach, point of view, work as an artist, metalsmith, and sometimes jeweler is both deeply embedded in the crafts and in many ways resists the rules. I found myself rushing through things like the perfect seamless clasp because it felt beside the point. And I kept trying to do it anyway because I thought it was something I ought to do, being embedded in this field. While there's so much work I love and admire for its clever fabrication, and I enjoy a functional and interesting pin stem as much as the next nerdy metalsmith, those sort of really specific conventions are beside the point. They don't pull me closer to the idea or impact I'm really interested in. The conversations about the body as a site that occur across contemporary jewelry are things that do perpetually hold my interest. But I've also come to understand that I can engage with these ideas and discourses in so many different ways and through my own working rules and even through non-jewelry objects. I've always really loved research, literature, poetry, philosophy. I have a fairly broad range of academic interests, and I engage with various rhetorics across fields, and these things find their way into my work. I was first introduced to the book Hope in the Dark by author and activist Rebecca Solnit almost 10 years ago now, and it continues to inspire my thinking. Solnit states, "The future is dark, with a darkness as much of the womb as the grave." This body of work, Elegy for the Wound, in many ways is a response to darkness as described by Solnit. Elegy for the Wound is a metaphor, multivalent, an encounter with embodiment that is animated, active, alive. And I believe that it is within my work's contract with metaphor and its quiet invitation to engage the body, both through jewelry and sculptural objects, that a remedy can be found. In building this body of work, I spent a significant amount of time with a book called Metaphors We Live by George Lakoff and Mark Johnson. Metaphors We Live By asserts that our conceptual systems are anchored in metaphor. We understand our environment by way of the body. This work, jewelry, objects, physical things in our environment, ask for an understanding through the haptic senses. They invite you to pause, to imagine weight, sensation, movement, to catch your own gaze for a moment when the light strikes a plane of transparent enamel just right. This kind of engagement requires a careful attention directed towards one's body. We are continuously moving quickly through the world, processing information and experience through our bodies, though we don't always stop, reflect, and examine what it is that we carry. I believe that the ability to deeply relate to uncertainty and darkness as multivalent phenomena, full of hope and suffering, delight and pain, requires us to direct our attention back to our bodies and the things that they hold. In inviting those who engage with this work to rely on sense and perception, and to bring with them their own sense of bodily context and history to aid in understanding, meaning can emerge and a remedy can emerge. My work is primarily made of steel, vitreous enamel, wool, and leather. I work these materials such that they eschew definition. Steel is forged and treated to appear as if it might be soft or generous. Vitreous enamel is distanced from its relationship to something ultra precious and instead becomes a glossy void or portal. The rules of what enamel can or cannot, should or should not do, are things I do acknowledge and continue to find my way around. The rules of forging and welding are also things I am aware of and determine my own working rules for. My work's relationship to craft, its history, its conventions, are things that I conceptualize as liquid matter. They have the potential to phase into a gas. I can determine my own set of working rules, prioritize experimental processes, and they are things that have the potential to phase into something more solid. There are places in the work that are really reliant on skill or mastery and the context the crafts provide. Most of the time, I find myself somewhere in between. My process of working material to a place of transformation or ambiguity and my fluid relationship to craft are important. It is in this space of material uncertainty that there is the potential to pause. When I exhibited this body of work for the first time, I was asked repeatedly at the opening if many of the pieces were made of ceramic. While the folded, bent, and reconstructed fragments may appear as though they had been crushed, shaped, and softened by a hand, they began as thick steel stock worked through a process of heavy forging. The physical properties of steel remain ever present in the work. These objects are cold, harsh, a little bit industrial, large in scale. In many ways, their impact relies on these properties and qualities intrinsic to steel being active and visible and present. It is in that space of approaching something and a moment of confusion in terms of identifying its material. That space in between allows us to renegotiate our relationship to steel and what its potential could be, what else it could signify or do. It complicates our understanding. The work asks you to consider its physical properties and weight. Many of these things are very heavy. Necklaces weigh 8 pounds or more. They're rigid. They forego comfort for poetics, addressing acutely vulnerable parts of the body, resting over the neck, chest, or torso. If the crux of metaphor is to understand one thing in terms of another, then to understand the material quality of these objects is to understand their potential to invoke curiosity or contemplation, and to make associations or meaning through accessing one's personal record of sensory and bodily history. Many of the jewelry objects throughout this body of work have titles related to the idea of protection. In many ways, the scale, the steel, and relationship to the chest and torso draws a connection to armor. However, none of these works are solid, impenetrable sheaths or forms of literal physical protection. In fact, they're uncomfortable, burdensome. This is where a sense of multivalence reemerges. These objects engender a dialogue about protection and vulnerability without literally doing so. They address the act or process of guarding the body or psyche, and how the act of guarding also comes at its own cost. There is both loss and gain. My work's relationship to protection is in part inspired by the theory of duende. Duende was first formally theorized by Andalusian poet and playwright Federico Garcia Lorca through his study of flamenco dance. Duende is not so much a thing or a form of representation as much as it is an effective process. It is an understanding of the body in relationship to an experience of struggle, vulnerability, and fortitude. Duende is understood as being born of struggle. It is not a victory over that struggle, but the residue of it. It is an encounter with the fallibility of the body and the potential for loss. The ideas and dynamics are explored in formats beyond jewelry across this work. Elegy for the Wound includes several sculptural art objects that stay close to the contemporary jewelry discourse. They engage with reimagined ideas of a setting or a mount and retain the same form language as their jewelry companions. Ovals appear throughout as a tether to familiar jewelry forms, but are used such that they become less of a graphic image and more of a void. While these objects are not jewelry or directly related to a specific use or function, They engage a related set of ideas and conventions, and they yield a different kind of opportunity for reflection and perception. The objects shift in scale. They are not supplemental to the pieces of jewelry, but interrelated and interdependent. The shifting forms, formats, and relationships to the body offer space to sense your way across the work. My practice as an artist spans across many approaches. As I spent time in the studio producing this work, I remained engaged with a creative writing and poetry practice. The word elegy, included in the body of work's title, comes from the Greek origin elegos, translating to mournful poem. Mourning and wounding are certain and necessary parts of inhabiting a body. They are palpable and active. They are portals to transformation. The wound is a guide. One must know it to know the way through it, to know how to mourn it. We all carry many things. While I like to think that this work's engagement with metaphor, the body and its histories, and the spaces which are uncertain and dark is some form of a slow and calculated remedy, it may also just be a quiet space to breathe, reflect, slow down, pause. A different kind of remedy, but a remedy nonetheless. Our world is fast and unpredictable, full of chance and change. Our bodies are fallible, holding equally the potential for survival and loss and a place of wisdom all the same. This body of work came to be alongside several pieces of writing and poetry. I don't always present these things together, but I thought it would be fun to share one here. It is careful work to carry it all. It is a new moon and a spring tide bound to a greater cycle, tethered to a rise and return. You are too. So summon a rise from your soft belly and hold steady like steel. Let the wash of return expose the wound. You must know the wound to know the remedy. You must be eager for what is gentle and wed to patience. You must rise and you will return. You must rise and you will return. As I start to consider where my work is moving next, the summer feels full of promise. I've spent the past year acclimating to my new role as a full-time educator, so it's been a bit of a dance moving between that and my studio space. I've been working in a lot of new and strange materials. There's been some encaustic things with wood happening, and I'm really excited to sort of take these strange material studies that have been happening throughout the year and see what happens when the encaustic and wax and wood collides with steel and enamel. So these are just some, I don't know, little sneak peeks of what's been cooking behind the scenes. But I'm really looking forward to a studio summer. There's some serious work that needs to get done. Thank you so much for listening. My social media handle is there and my website. So come find me online and say hi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paige. I like that phrase, like studio summer. Like I'm gonna definitely steal that and hashtag it in my posts going forward. All right. Let's move on. We have our final speaker. I hope I pronounced this right, Shannon Kurzyniec. All right, great. From Richmond, Virginia. She's an interdisciplinary artist, materialsmith, social impact activist. She deals with the exploration of the personal and social impacts of prescription medications on the human condition and their side effects. Here, she was a BFA at Wayne State University, and she pursued her MFA at the Virginia Commonwealth University. She's also had a couple stints at Pocosin and Penland, and she is currently a teaching fellow at Virginia Commonwealth. So, Shannon. Love to hear from you.
Hi, well, thank you. Let me share my screen. Where to begin? I was born and raised in Shelby Township, a suburb of Detroit, Michigan, back in 1984. Oh, wait, that's not why we're here. Well, maybe it is a little. I mean, I wouldn't be here if that didn't happen, right? So here we are. Well, here I am. This is a journey of a girl surrounded by the idea that a pill would fix everything and anything. If something hurts, take a pill. If you can't focus, take a pill. Feeling sad, there's a pill for that too. Throughout this talk, I'll take you in and out of my practice, exploring the whys, the whens, and of course, the hows that bring us here today. My first memory of pills is with my grandma. I was 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, watching her take her morning medicine. I was completely mesmerized by the colors, shapes, and sizes of all the pills that she had to take in order to get through the day. Sitting there with her, I began to play with them. I would organize them on the table in different categories and pass them to her to swallow by the handful. This became a routine that I would repeat with her over and over. During my time in undergrad, I began to hone the traditional skills of metal fabrication. Through the exploration of metal, I wondered what would happen if I used the same techniques with other materials, from discarded found objects to the material that I had become so familiar with, the pill bottle. My work was technically driven. The conceptual meanings about to why I was creating had not quite found their way out of my head and into the work. It wasn't until a workshop at Penland with Gina Sau had I really begun to push the materials that I could get my hands on. She challenged us to make, and make some more, to cut, to burn, to roll, to hammer, to stitch, to bind, and then some more to the material that we had brought with us. We needed to create 50 unfinished samples for making a final piece. Before making a final piece. On the 50th sample, I had thought I had exhausted all my options with pill bottles. Then I walked past the rolling mill. I wondered what would happen if I stuck a rolled the strip of pill bottle between the two steel wheels. This is how Caution Not Child Resistant was born. Here's where I began to think about the body and its role with jewelry. Oh, and that anything could be turned into a brooch. The idea behind jewelry is that the person wearing it should become involved with it by being able to do something with it. At the beginning of my master's program at Virginia Commonwealth University, I thought body adornment and jewelry were one and the same, an aesthetic small object to be worn on the wrist, finger, neck, or earlobes. These objects to me were a statement only about the wearer, about commodification, and what was once a symbol or status merely had become accessible to all and could easily be discarded at any moment without thought. Through these teachings, research, and openness to what body adornment and jewelry truly was, I discovered that it hadn't all had to fit in the same small box that it was once placed in. Jewelry is an art whose unlimited purpose is its own integration into the body, human body. For me, the only rule in defining moment for body adornment is that it merely needs to interact, engage, or use the body in some capacity. It does not have to be worn by the body in its traditional sense. Back to the why for a second. Through the exploration of the personal and social impacts of prescription medications on the human condition, I've discovered that my influence of prescription medications on myself is much greater than I had ever anticipated. The deeper I dig into my subconscious, the further back I can find the impact was created. As I said before, my first memory of pills was with my maternal grandmother. Being 7 years old, watching her take her pills by the handful to get through the day after breaking her neck. My curious nature had taken over. I wanted to know why she took them, what each pill was for, what were they supposed to do, what happened when she didn't take that one, and what would happen if she took too many or missed a dose. Okay, now that we've touched on the why, let's dive back into the what. Jewelry was no longer just an object for me to be worn, but an extension of the body. Challenging myself by varying the scale, materials used, interactions with the body, and how the work was presented, I create pieces that are representational, or what I would refer to as a sarcastic caricature of societal pressures They're the world of prescription medications. They're the manipulation of materials that come with the medical waste while being environmentally conscious, and I construct apparatuses for the consumption of pills. Extensions of the human anatomy to help increase the amount of pills one could take at once and in the matter of how one takes their pills. Redefining what body adornment is to me and what adornment could look like. Now a little bit about how. In my practice, I use traditional metal fabrication techniques to explore and critique the pharmaceutical world. Through tracing and repoussé, I replicate pills, objects of impermanence, into enduring forms, transforming them from symbols of permanence and into symbols of permanence and reflection. By repeating these forms, I create patterns that evoke familiarity, echoing the daily rituals and routines shaped by medication. And the repetition is where I find comfort. Using sawing and piercing, I cut out words I've written, personal reflections that give voice to my lived experience within the system. I carve lost wax to construct the main components of fictitious medical devices, bringing images, imagined tools, and instruments into intangible existence. These processes allow me to bridge concepts, material, turning critical narratives into physical artifacts. One of the things that I have to consider when making work that is about a tough topic, a double-edged sword, if you will, is that viewers can bring their own cultural baggage to images, meaning there can be no such thing as fixed, predetermined, and unified meaning. I have to be mindful of this when selecting symbols, subject matter, titles, and materials, and even considering where the work is intended to be worn on the body. While I have specific reasons behind my choices, researching to understand how my work might be perceived or what meanings it could carry for others helps me make more intentional and informed decisions about the materials, placements, and titles of the work. While using pills in my work, I choose to go for the white pill, the symbolic, right off the cuff, most familiar version of medication you can find. I do this because I am not talking about one medication in particular. The white pill can represent allergy medication, Ritalin, an opioid, or even just a baby aspirin. I don't want the type of pill to be the main focus. It is all medication. It is the pharmaceutical companies that have turned hospital visits into vending machines for consumers. In graduate school, I became uncomfortable with consistently being in the state of the unknown and unfinished, fearing failure versus embracing the ability to be limitless in my creations. Beginning to explore other mediums, not just the materials that I was comfortable and accustomed to, metal and found objects were being eliminated from my vocabulary to some extent. I found that I had limited myself all these years to tangible objects to solely be worn on the human body. I realized that I had opinions to share, statements to make, and personal healing to begin, needing to utilize whatever medium or materials that were available or necessary for me to get my message across. Once again, thinking about the body and its role in my work, I began to step into the realm of performances. My first one being a 20-minute piece where I was swallowing pills over and over and over in front of my cohort as I recited the reasons why someone might take, along with the phrase, I open, I insert, I swallow, I repeat. Let Me Carry It For You was my second performance piece in grad school. I sewed over 100 pockets onto a pair of coveralls, grabbed a bucket of white rocks and a handful of markers. I put on the coveralls and went into the middle of campus, asking strangers if I could carry or worry a burden for them, instructing them to write on the rock, close their eyes, take a deep breath in, and exhale onto the rock and place it into a pocket of their choosing so that I may carry it for them. It wasn't until I returned into the studio, unzipped, and stepped out of the rock-filled coveralls did it hit me. Instead of showing others what empathy felt like, I found myself creating a piece in which I was taking control of my empathetic nature. Swallowing pills in a performance, one after another, the striking of the hammer onto the metal again and again, the words that I write over and over to release myself of burdens and worries in which I have asked others to carry for them. There, in the repetition, I find myself. Through this research, I've come to understand that the body need not be commanded, only invited, that a work awakens only in the presence of the body, stirred by sight, sound, scent, touch, or the intimacy of adornment, creating an environment that completely overtakes the senses, flipping the narrative once again. A fictional apartment where 9-foot blister packs cover the walls and floors, saturating the space with the suffocating sense of enclosure and the sterile scent of clinical settings. Traces of life linger. TV's loop, pharmaceutical ads, and a video of me swallowing my daily medication. The short clip from 30 Days on the Job was on view near the bed to serve as a nightly reminder that some of us are taught at a young age to take medication when we don't feel well. Stomach ache, headache, sore throat, fever, even the imaginary boo-boo is given a pill to cure. As we age, we begin to reach for the pills for other ailments or what we may be deemed as an ailment: weight, concentration, emotional stability, beauty, etc. Because of these teachings, we have become we have come to form habits that we've become accustomed to subconsciously without warning or intention. So while you may only be taking one pill a day for the occasional headache, or it may be a treatment for 30 days, accustomizing yourself to reach for the bottle, open it, insert into the mouth, and swallow is an instinct that you have now developed for life, a habit that you'll do over and over without question. Just as our daily lives have been consumed by the influence of pharmaceutical companies, this apartment is its side effect. Everywhere you look, there's something familiar yet strangely unrecognizable. What once was just an average alarm clock is now your daily dose of medication. While this may not be what as sorry, while this may not be what we as jewelers are traditionally taught to recognize as jewelry or even adornment, the space invites, invokes, and requires the body in order to be activated. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we do as jewelers and metalsmiths? We invite the body into our work to activate it, to give it meaning, purpose, and life. Thank you to my fellow panelists, Seattle Metals Guild, and all of you for going on this journey with me through my whys, whens, and hows of my practice this evening.
I think, Kristen, did you have some questions you wanted to go through first?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. I'm really excited that we were able to have you, the three of you, together here tonight. I feel like there's such a strong amount of connections between the work that each of you create. And I'd love to have conversation that can be spurred by those similarities if you see them as well. So I guess I'll start off by saying that I kind of approach this type of work as more of a lay person. I don't have the same training that I presume many of you do. And so I'm just kind of interested to learn a little bit about how you learn to approach your work this way. Does it come kind of naturally, or do you have formal training that has kind of taught you the process of working with your personal histories and your deeply personal experiences and feelings, and exploring those through material exploration? I feel each of you have touched on that in a way that's really meaningful in terms of art as a remedy, or as an exploration toward conveying one's experience to others. So I've rambled about this for a minute now, but perhaps you can jump in and share what you know about how you've been able to find success in bringing those ideas to life in that way. Does anyone want to go
I can
first?
start. I can jump in.
Thank you.
My path into studying art was very meandering. I spent the first half of my undergraduate degree focused on cultural studies, had no plans to have an art degree and then another art degree. So I sort of enter my framework from a really like analytical space and sort of draw on um, what various other creative fields have to offer, whether it's literature or poetry or anthropology, philosophy. I draw on all of those different things to sort of triangulate where I might want to go with material or um, objects. But I think it's also a pretty fast and loose process in the studio. Um, there's a lot of really focused inquiry beforehand and responding in real time in a studio space to what's happening in front of me.
Yeah, I would
Makes
say,
sense.
yeah.
Please, Shannon.
So undergrad, I did some work in exploration with the materials and prescription bottles, but didn't quite know why until a lot of it happened in grad school. One of my cohorts would always say that in grad school, you get your skin unzipped, turned inside out, and zipped back up. And that's really kind of what happened is in the first semester, we did a lot of writing and soul searching. And finally hit me that my history with the pill bottle was probably the most important or relevant at the time. And I just kind of kept running with it, and it turned into an entire room. Um, so yeah, I think that it's newer for me in the last few years to really know why I'm making, and it's not just a personal impact; it's hopefully a more global or social impact that I can do with the work.
That's such an important question. Thank you so much
Mhm.
for all of you for raising it. And were you going to jump into Mariah?
My kind of approach to material, like I'm an oldest kid. I started undergrad as a mechanical engineering major and love building things, don't like math. And so when I first came into art, I was very topical, very surface level of understanding material and how to make. And it wasn't until grad school, I liked Shannon's reference there of being unzipped, turned side up, zip back up, um, that I kind of ran actually both my undergrad and my graduate kind of professors asked me the question, why are you making with this? And I was like, I don't know, it's pretty. Like, I don't know. And then grad school is when my graduate professor was like, why are you using these? And I was like, I don't know. And she pushed me to kind of do those material studies, understand why I was using materials. And it was very eye-opening, especially in learning myself. It became more about me understand that I'm putting something into the world rather than making for someone. And that's where it kind of really transformed of understanding material and what its purpose is.
I think not that I'm a panelist here necessarily. I mean, I guess I am in the Zoom sense, but I also agree because my undergraduate was in something totally different, not art related. And I had been, making things, but when I went into graduate school as well, it was a heavy. There's like an intro on the technique and the fabrication, but then I would say the majority of the the coursework, I think, was on concept and how to like manifest that concept into something physical. And so I think also, yeah, professors would ask like, okay, use this thing, like why? Like what does it mean to this piece other than just holding XYZ up or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah, I felt like the professors were like the 5-year-olds that just learned the word why.
yeah.
It was just like why, and you're just like oh. So
I don't know.
no,
Leave me alone.
Well, thank you for letting me learn, vicariously through your experiences. And I don't have that MFA experience, but I'm thrilled to learn what I can from yours. So thank you for that.
Just constantly ask yourself why, and it'll be the same. It'll be a much cheaper experience.
Yeah, I'll save myself a few dollars. Oh, I'm sure
Yeah.
we have some educators with us here tonight, among us, even on the panel. So we don't need to belittle the importance of a degree like that.
No, it was
I
no,
understand
it
it.
was a very
I
important degree.
I understand that you feel that way. I just wanted to be explicit. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Well, as for anyone that's attended my previous chats, I always have a couple of I'll call them friendly icebreakers, but I try to switch it up. So I came up with a fun one, let's see. So you might be familiar with I'll make this PG, kill, marry, date. So I'm going to give you three words and you tell me if you would kill, marry, or date it. So material, technique, and concept.
Oh,
Gotta write these down.
Material, technique, and concept.
Yep.
Yay.
Okay, well, I'll just jump in first again.
Hard. That's so
Um,
hard.
Oh,
I'm gonna kill technique. I want to make my own rules. I'm stubborn. I want to determine the rules. Um,
oh,
marry concept, and I want to date material. Like that's flirty and fun. Let's go.
Mm, I like it.
I
Okay. I
I'd
got
have to agree.
Okay.
I had to really think about it. I am definitely 100% kill technique. Kill technique. Even as somebody who is very much like, I like technique, I like structure. But I actually flip-flop mine. I would marry material and date concept. Like, I don't know.
Mm. Well, I think I would date technique because I love taking different classes and learning different techniques. And it may just be like, I'm kind of in my enameling foray. I don't think it's really, a long-term, thing, but yeah. So I think I would date technique. I think I would probably, uh, I don't want to kill concept, but I don't want to marry it either. I think it has its place, but it's more like, yeah, I don't know. I can't even answer my own question. I only just make questions for you guys to answer. So, all right. Um, let's see. I have some individual questions for folks. So let me see. Mariah, so you said you were learning about music production. So I'm curious, how do you incorporate music in your work, or have you explored that? What are you listening to in your studio?
I I am in the process of learning how to incorporate it. I'm really interested in making like a full experience. My students, I started teaching recently, and my students always laugh. I'm like, there's no pictures up here. It's all words, sounds, music. That's how I understand my emotions is through music. And I'm like, why am I focusing on three-dimensional visual objects to get that experience when I can also incorporate that experience I have? And so I was like, we're going to learn how to make music just so I can add audio into the environment of where my pieces are being displayed or
Hmm,
seen or viewed. So, yeah, music has become kind of a way for me to understand emotions.
okay. What are you listening to these days?
Oh my goodness. Hopefully there's other people in here who understand this. Sleep Token, shout out. They just released a new album. If you love lyrics that tell stories, interconnectedness, in music, Sleep Token is for you. Um, the lore. I could speak way too much about them, so we'll just cut it off there. But Sleep Token.
Definitely going to check that one out. Okay, thank you. My question for Paige. Okay, so you had mentioned when you had a showing that folks were surprised that your work was in steel and not in ceramics. And I think part of that, from what I can tell from your presentation, is just how smooth the work is. Like it's forged, but there's no tool marks. I'm just curious about your forging techniques.
They're totally made up. They're totally made up. A real proper blacksmith might be a little bit appalled. But it starts as like hollow stalk. It's square stalk. It's like tubing, it's hollow. And I just work with varying lengths of it, and kind of bash in the corners, fold it onto itself. Um, I don't know, I respond to how the steel moves, with each sort of blow of a hammer, or depending on if you strike a corner versus a plane, if it's
Hmm.
hollow and it's interior. Um, and then I sandblast a lot of it too, and that's where the surface really changes, and then they're all sort of sprayed down with a matte enamel lacquer, so they don't like rust or
Hmm.
sort of are affected by environment and moisture. It's steel, um, but it's sort of a process of abrasive and then flattening that surface with the spray.
Interesting. Thanks. Okay. And Shannon, I'm curious about like your work. You talked about obviously you have the physical pieces, but you also
Mhm.
kind of move into performance art, and kind of how did that evolution occur? Was you mentioned that the performance maybe started in graduate school? Is that something
Mhm.
that spawned out of that study or
Yeah, it did. We had a professor that had us make stuff like some three pieces every week,
wow.
basically, and a lot of it were sketch like.
Mm,
And at some point, he's like, "Well, why don't you just start chewing on pills and spitting them out?" Or, and I was like, "Well, that's crazy. Like, that's a little too far for me." And then for some reason, I decided, um, the first one I did was swallowing the pills. And I was like, I started to work in my spoken word, which I had put down for a long time, and brought that into it. And so by swallowing them, I was watching the classmates just like, oh my God, but they didn't realize I wasn't actually swallowing pills. I had started to like mimic it, but
mm,
just the sense of mimicking it. So yeah, grad school brought out the performances. And then I ended up doing an improv class for a few months to help just really break that barrier. And I did a few and I want to do more. But the video of swallowing it was one of those performances too. Just that was a daily act that we do that we don't even pay attention to. We're just so
hmm.
used to it. So starting to record myself doing the things that I normally do and seeing what happens and what I can do with that in my work. Um, and starting to bring um, my work to that and my pieces up until the performances. They've always, my professors kept saying they're performative in themselves. They all have mechanics to them. So
Right.
how do I start to bring them together to show them in action? So to answer your
Great.
question in a long, very long sentence, yes, it happened in
I'm
grad
looking for
school.
long answers, people. That's great.
It
Um,
happened. It happened in grad school. I am excited to do more, and there was even a book that talks about the artist that sold snowballs on the side. This is a lot of S's on the side streets in New York, and it was never like recorded. It's like all hearsay, and the whole thought of like, does it have to be photographed or exist to actually
mhm,
have been a piece? So that's been
right.
that was a really good moment in the performances with Let It Carry. That's one of the few only photographs of it. The rest of the performances, I did it three times, were never photographed or filmed, and it's just the remnants that came back with me to show that it was
I'm
happening.
sure they're on someone's social media, but
Somewhere, yes. This random girl at the island in this suit is just standing here asking people for
exactly,
things. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and I think the video recording that you had is interesting because it's very Big Brother, it's got all the screens and you're kind of
Mhm.
seeing all the different time lapse
Well,
moments.
it was a factory producing the pills and then me taking the pills. So it starts to, at the end of that 3 minutes, it's me and all the screens, and it's me becoming now the machine
Hmm.
that, so,
Okay,
yeah.
great. All right, let's see. We got a Q&A here. Let's see. Shannon, how do you feel performance complements your work on pharmaceuticals? I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but
I feel like that just, yeah, it just kind of answered that,
yeah.
you know?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Paige, you have some you had, talked about a lot about like philosophy and, poetry and things like that. How did you kind of bring that how did that inspiration kind of come up in your life? Did it come before art, or is it something that you kind of drew while you were working on art? Um,
I mean, I think I've always liked to write for as long as I can recall. Um, But I think I find it really interesting to understand how people in different creative fields articulate these really complex ideas about
Mhm.
being human. Um, and I think, I don't know, it's kind of circling back to the first question that Kristen had posed in some way. I don't think my unique experience or story is that interesting or that important when we think about the sort of collective continuum of human existence. But what I think is interesting to consider is what you can do with the challenging things we encounter in the world. Everyone's life is hard. Everybody encounters different kinds of challenges. I'm not, I don't know, ultra unique or special in any way for that. So then what do you do with all of the experiences you gather and sort of assess and distill like what is salient or central or really really deeply human, um, and then how do you translate that into material object? Where is the offering or invitation for someone else to engage with something and, I don't know, access something about their own world that feels really um, raw and human and honest and I think that's why I'm interested in literature and poetry and different forms of creative practice because people do all of those things in different ways too. I love to make things that are tangible and visual and that are art objects, but it's not the only way to have that kind of dialogue.
okay, thank you. Um, I'm kind of curious as a group of, the category of emerging artists, how you've approached getting your art into the world. You're in graduate school, you're making things, you're having your school exhibitions. Like, how do you get it like out further into the art universe? Like, what experiences have you had, like with galleries or exhibitions, things like that? Is it competitions that you're entering, or is it,
Uh,
something else?
I literally, I just sign up for that subscription on Cafe, that call for entry website, and I apply to anything and everything that I can get that I'm like, this applies. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what I'm using. And I just follow that subscription and just, I have my portfolio preset with all my images, titles, things. And then my card's already linked for those fees. And I just boop, boop, click a couple buttons. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
great
it's a
stuff.
lot of clicking.
Yeah. It's a lot of clicking.
Click it
Sometimes you have to
button.
type something. Sometimes you have to like write,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think I do the same. Instagram has been great. The Snag website, Ethical Metalsmiths, has been great for that. But having a preset portfolio, titles, images, and writings, like typical writings, a statement bio. I have a few different versions of my statement depending on the exhibitions that I go for.
Mhm.
Like the Battle of the Rings that Christine mentioned recently with Danica. I play with the satirical side, and so my statement was about the pill crusher ring, like being something you could buy, and is you have hard pills to swallow. So trying to stand out amongst my peers with my titles and statements is
Mhm.
something that I've been finding helpful to look for that. And luckily, I've had the fortunate experience to have been invited to some exhibitions recently from my alma mater, my undergrad. I can't think past my bedtime, but that's it's really late. That being invited to. So, but just being willing as an emerging artist to put yourself out there. The
Mhm.
worst thing is going to happen is a no, and you move on and you put out, and um, sometimes you get invited back through certain curators. Which has been great with even New York Jewelry Week. I've had the opportunity to be in the same show twice, different years, because the curators really enjoyed my work. So
Great.
being able to be open for that.
Yeah. Paige, do you have anything to add?
Um, I mean, I think it's tricky knowing what to apply for, when to apply for it. My work sort of falls between jewelry and sculpture. Um, and I don't know. I think it's where it is geographically, who the jury is, what the format of the exhibition is, whether it's in person or virtual or a publication, um, and sort of reading diagonally across all of those things. Um, but it's a dance, it's a process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that as a sculptural type person as well. If
Mhm.
it's in person, that shipping for sculptural pieces, you really got to read those. Read that. Read
Yeah,
that
definitely.
diagonal, like you said. Read the diagonal, making those adjustments.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
what you said, Paige, though, is knowing where your work fit into what shows. So really reading the calls is a great thing, especially for those of us who are still coming up and coming out is in futures, is knowing where you like. I'm not going to send my blister pack to a jewelry show, although it would be fun to get in. I don't know if the likelihood of it is going to get in there. But yeah, I think that's a good point to double down on.
Okay. And it seems like most of your works are more on the conceptual side. Do you guys do
Hmm.
production work as well, or, commercial lines of anything? Or are you, I mean, probably pretty busy with teaching as well?
I
I'm, oh, sorry, go ahead,
couple pieces.
Mariah.
Sorry, Paige. I do have a couple pieces that I've started going back into for a little. I do it mostly for like side cash to buy new tools. And so it's
Mm,
very low key because I don't have a lot of time to produce production style.
mhm.
So they're produced, I make them production style, but they're more signature individual pieces based
Hmm.
Mhm.
on demand. Um, and that's just like my tool money. Like I need a tool, let me make something real quick. Who wants to buy it?
What about?
Yeah, I mean, I worked production full time for several years before going back and getting my MFA. Um, but I teach full time and at SUNY New Paltz in foundation and art education. Um, and between doing that and then trying to be in my studio, um, I don't I don't prioritize production. It is there and there are things I find interesting about it. Um, but it's not a priority at the moment.
Okay,
I've
Shannon.
dipped my toes in, haven't gotten too far in it, but even my earrings, starting to do some, but I also don't know how many people want to wear pill encrusted earrings 24/7. So it's a little niche for me, but one day.
There's something out there for everyone. So
Exactly. So there's a buyer for everything.
true, true. Okay, great. Well, I know it's late for most of us on the East Coast, but I do want to end with one last question that I always ask all our panelists. Um, I'm wanting to know how you would like your work remembered once, you are no longer of this realm. What would you like folks to, the curators and the historians and the aliens, like what would you like them to be like, oh, this is what she brought with her art to the world?
That's not a hard question.
I think one thing that I would want my work to kind of bring to that after I'm long gone is the connection, the human connection, having everybody experience that moment of being seen and knowing that they're not alone in certain experiences. We may experience them differently, but someone else does also experience it. So I don't know. I like being unique. I'm a weirdo. I like being unique, but knowing that someone else is also experiencing the same thing makes it less scary.
Okay.
I think with mine, again, with the current subject matter at hand is, something to reflect on even going forward, or to be able to look back and see the impact that that world and realm has had on our generation, and being such an impactful situation that I think has been overlooked for quite some time. So hopefully our future generations don't overlook it. So that's my goal.
Great. Paige.
I guess I'm maybe more interested in sort of a sensory or haptic resonance more than a singular idea or image or thought. I mean, I think there's something, I don't know if other people can sort of relate to this, but when I'm spending time with or putting on something for the first time, a piece of jewelry or looking at a piece of art, and that, I don't know, brief moment in between encountering the thing and processing the thing, where everything feels slow and quiet, and it is you and this thing, and that sort of buffer that exists in between that encounter and the rest of the world, um, and what is sort of excavated from that interaction. I think those are really, I don't know, sort of delightful, sacred little moments we get to encounter as people in a creative space who make objects.
Okay. The little wrinkles in time.
Yeah,
That's
it's nice. It's cute.
Well, thank you all our panelists, Paige, Mariah, and Shannon, for sharing with us tonight. Thank you to all our attendees as well. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Art Jewelry Forum in Rio Grande. And I'd like to remind everyone we have our final series, believe it or not, number 4, June 17th, same time, same place. So you can sign up for that on the Seattle Metals Guild website to get the formal invite. Great. Well, I hope everyone has a great night, or for those listening later on, a great morning and afternoon. Thank you.